Welcome back into College Basketball Recruiting Weekly. This is the second in a two-part series where we are breaking down the best young prospects in the NBA. This is tied to the Rising Stars Challenge as part of All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis, and it gives us a chance to revisit some of our work from years past and really dig into the best young players in the NBA. Our last show redrafted the NBA draft of 2023, thus breaking down the best rookies in the NBA, and this week's show is going to go back to the class of 2022 and thus examine the best sophomores in the NBA. The way it's going to work, Ebas and I will go redraft one at a time, 1 through 10, through that 2022 NBA draft. And Ebas, I will give you the first pick in the draft because I really want to know, are you going to stick with Paolo like the Magic did, or are you going to go with Chet or maybe somebody else?
I'm sticking with Paolo like the Magic did. I think they made a great choice on draft night, and I think he's proving to be worthy of a number one draft pick. He's an all-star in year two, averaging right around 23.7 rebounds and 5 assists a game. His three-point shooting is way up from his rookie season. He's up in the 36% range from just below 30% as a rookie. And the guy just looks like he's going to be a fixture in the all-star game for a long time. He's skilled, he's strong, he's smart, he's really figuring out his game. You know, in the past, he's always wanted to settle a little bit too much for jump shots. He's really figured out a nice mix between his post-up game and that jump shooting, and the guy just seems to be getting better at a rapid rate.
We talked about him before, and so I don't want to regurgitate any of that same stuff, but we've seen him take a jump each and every year, dating back to his freshman year in high school, and it's how he's been able to sustain that spot among the best players in the class. And the two things that stand out to me this year are the three-point shooting that you mentioned and the improvements he's made on the defensive end of the floor. I think both of those things have been really important to not only his game taking the next step, but Orlando taking the next step in the Eastern Conference as well. All right, with the second overall pick, I am also going to stay consistent with what the draft was. I'm going to take Chet Holmgren. We talked about Chet a lot last week because we were debating him versus Wemby for the Rookie of the Year. The thing I will say about Chet is that he is a perfect fit for that OKC system because he can protect the rim, he can stretch the floor, he can drive the ball. And best of all, for those of us who've watched Chet since he was younger, is the fact that he has stayed healthy. That was the big concern coming into the draft, and those concerns were only amplified last year after he suffered that season-ending injury before training camp. So it has been great to see him healthy and impacting winning. He would be, in this situation, the second pick in the draft, although I do think there's a case he could make for number one. Ebas, who you got at number 3?
Actually, one of Chet's teammates now, Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, who went, I believe, 13 on draft night? Or 12th, sorry.
12, yeah.
Night, out of Santa Clara. You know, he's knocking right on the door of being an all-star down the road. He's getting close. 19 points, 4 rebounds, 4.6 assists per game. He's a very efficient player, shot over 50% from the field as a rookie. He's shooting nearly 55% from the field right now in his second year. And he just does so much for them because of his ability to create off the dribble and get in the lane and make things happen. A lot of fun to watch play. And of course, you know, Oklahoma City with this young team with him and Chet, and of course, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, second place in the West right now as we're approaching the All-Star break. It's been pretty impressive to see, and clearly Jalen's a big part of that.
Completely co-sign everything you just said. And the only other thing I want to add to that is I think it's very possible that when OKC fans look back on how this team was made, because I think they've been built to contend for championships for a long time. They're so young. They're only going to keep getting better. They're going to look back on this draft, this 2022 NBA draft, where they got Chet at number 2, and then they got Jalen at 12, and they are going to say, we nailed that draft, and that put us in a position to be a championship contender for a long time, because we already had SGA, but now to get these two guys and make it a full trio, of course they have Josh Giddey there and others, but they absolutely nailed this 2022 NBA draft, even though at this point, Ousmane Dieng hasn't really paid off anywhere to the same extent. But by getting Chet and Jalen Williams in this draft at 2 and 12, they set themselves up for the next decade plus. Yeah, all right, the fourth pick in the draft, I'm going to be curious your reaction on this one. because when we went through this exercise a few months ago, I think he was barely in the top 10. But with the fourth pick in the 2022 NBA redraft, I am taking Jaden Ivey from the Pistons. Now, Jaden Ivey did not have a good start to his sophomore season. Monty Williams came in, he was preaching defense, and Jaden was not up to his standards and really struggled to find consistent rotation minutes. However, in the last month or so, he has gained the trust of Monty Williams, and in the last 5 games, he's playing 32 minutes per night, averaging 26 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists. He's shooting 52% from the floor, 59% from three, which obviously isn't sustainable, and 71% from the free throw line. You break those numbers down more, this is a guy whose spot up catch and shoot numbers are better than we expected coming out of college. And I think that's huge when you're talking about the amount of non-shooters that are on this Detroit team. And his isolation numbers are freakishly good. So this is probably perceived as aggressive if you're just looking at his stats throughout the course of the year, because there was a big percentage of the year where he wasn't living up to it. And I will end with this. I never want to be one of those analysts that question coaches, especially NBA coaches, because they know more about basketball than I do. And, you know, I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about the game. I coached in college, coached in high schools, did a whole bunch of stuff as you have. But Monty Williams knows more about basketball than I do. I never want to be one of these guys who's questioning them. I just couldn't figure out why Jaden Ivey wasn't, and who knows, there's probably stuff going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to. Couldn't figure out why he wasn't more in the lineup beginning of the year. Now that he is, and not only that, but they're playing him with Cade, with Jalen Duren, with Ausar Thompson. Those guys are all on the floor together. Marcus Sasser, that's been their most common lineup throughout the last 5 games, and they've won 2 of those 5. So that's my long-winded way of saying Jaden Ivey at number 4. I know we're trying not to be as long-winded this week, but I'm curious what you think of that pick.
No, your reasoning is sound. I had Jaden Ivey in the top 10 of the redraft, just a bit further down, and actually I've got him behind his teammate Jalen Duren, who we'll eventually get to here. So,
All right.
you know, I actually had, so that puts me at 5. I actually had Keegan Murray still at number 4, out of Iowa with the Kings. So I guess I get him at 5 now. You know, he's just been really steady on a winning team where he hasn't had to be a primary option with Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, but really, really valuable guy, you know, 15 points, 5 rebounds a night type of guy. He's going to shoot it from 3. It's a little bit down this year. He's right around 36% after shooting 41% from 3 as a rookie. I'm not too worried about that. He just looks like a classic, you know, NBA wing who's going to be in that 15 to 20 point a game range for the next 10 years. I think it's interesting that he plays with Harrison Barnes on the Kings, because I envision kind of a pretty similar career arc kind of playing out for him. I see a lot of similarities to a young Barnes and a young Murray. You know, Murray's probably a little more skilled from the perimeter, whereas Barnes could play on the interior a little bit more, but just a solid guy. And I think it's proven to be a top 5 pick with his production so far, at least out of this draft class.
Heard Mike Brown call him one of the team's best 2 perimeter defenders earlier this week. And that is such a compliment and such a testament to what he's done on that end of the floor. You talked about the shooting numbers. They've been super streaky this year. He started the season out, shot 26% from 3-point line in December. January, it jumped up to 44%. February, it was at 39, which I think is representative of where we expect it to be. And then the last 6 games, he's just been 6 of 28 again. So he's taking on a lot more defensively. It's having to exert a lot more effort. But if he can ever combine those 2, I think it's all the makings of an elite 3-and-D wing. All right, so that brings it back to me at 6th overall, and I'm going to go Jabari Smith here. I had him 5th overall at my board. He's still just 20 years old. He turns 21 on May 13th. We've seen a real uptick in terms of his numbers from his rookie season to this year. I think it's clear in retrospect that he's not, at least to me, in the same tier as Paolo and Chet, which was, you know, very much the expectation on draft night. That may not be the case anymore, but he's still got real value. He's at his size, his spot up floor spacing, although not quite to the level yet that we expected coming out of college. It's shown real improvement, about 37% so far this season. He's got a compact release. There's no dip in his shot. I'm not an advocate of kids trying to mimic that early on, but he doesn't require a whole lot of separation. So he's got a lot of gravity as a floor spacer. And some of those defensive metrics, especially off the ball, are trending in the right direction too. So I think that, I'm not sure if he's got like offensive alpha potential yet, but again, he's just 20 years old. We don't know. And he's made really nice strides from last year to this year. So I've got him 6th overall on my board. Now, I'm intrigued because this was a spot where I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I'm very curious to see who you have at 7.
Yeah, so I actually had Jabari Smith at 5 on my redraft, just like you did. But
Okay.
here at 7, after a little bit of shakeup, Shaden Sharp, which is where he went on draft night. There's you can't help sometimes when watching him to have a little bit of a feeling of, I feel like there's so much more that this guy can give. But, prior to going out with the injury here recently, he was up to 16 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 3 assists per game. His shooting is down a bit overall from his rookie year, but I think it's a big byproduct of how young they are, and you're not playing next to Damian Lillard anymore, who's taking up a lion's share of the attention from a defense, but he's taking more threes. He's making more threes. He's showing some playmaking, and he's another guy who we talk about his youth. He doesn't turn 21 until May 30th, I believe.
Yeah.
So very young, and just his highs and what he can do athletically are so high that you don't want to draft him too low in a redraft, because he could still end up being one of the top, 3 or 4 guys out of this class when it's all said and done pretty easily.
You know what puzzles me about him, and again, I hate to be the guy who criticizes NBA coaches, because they always they know more than I do, and their context is different. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But Shaden Sharp, before his injury, was coming off the bench quite frequently. They were starting Tamari Kamara, and I just think if you're Portland, you're not in the postseason picture. Like, go out there with Scoot, Simons, and Shaden Sharp and see what that trio looks like, because hopefully that's your backcourt trio of the future. And if it's not, you got to move off somebody and start to get this foundation the way you want it for the foreseeable future. So that to me was something that I thought was, stood out in the Shaden Sharp evaluation. All right, that brings it back to me. Are we at 8 overall now?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I think you're going to agree with this then. I'm going Jalen Duren. Again, really young. Was barely eligible for the draft that year. And the total numbers when he's healthy have been really impressive. He's at 14 points, 12 rebounds per game. He's averaging almost 2.5 assists per game. And we've seen him be a shot blocking presence as well. The 2 games that the Pistons won last week, here's this stat line: 27 points, 22 rebounds, and 3 blocks. And then 20 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists. And if you go back and watch that tape, they were letting Jalen Duren bring the ball up the floor and initiate offense at times. So this guy is every bit the physical monster we expected coming out of high school. And now we're starting to see subtle signs of an uptick in his skill level. If that motor and his defensive awareness ever get to the point where they are consistent, this guy is going to be really, really good for a long time. And I know if you're a Detroit fan, you're saying like, hey, we stink. How do we have 2 of the best picks in this year's draft? But I think Ivy and Duren could still be long-term building blocks in Detroit.
Yeah, no doubt. Jalen is a beast. Just a monster. 27 double-doubles on the year. In fact, anytime he gets double-digit rebounds, he's going to get double-digit scoring as well. It's happened each time. You brought up the 27 and 22. He's just getting better at a rapid rate. Doesn't turn 21 until almost Thanksgiving. So he's really, really young out there. There's just so much to like with him.
Absolutely. All right, I'm curious if you've got another big coming off the board here with is this your last pick? This is 9.
Yeah. Nope. I'm a spot or 2 away from the next big. I'm going with Benedict Mathurin here, who has had a little bit of a dip from that great rookie season, but still playing extremely well as a scorer off the bench, primarily for the Pacers. 14 points a game. Not getting to the free throw line near as much. He was a 6 a game as a rookie, which really helps him kind of acclimate himself to the league. He's just really good guy. I think he's going to be, if he's not your starter, he's a very, very good option as a sixth man for a long time. And I think just by production of what he's done in his career so far, he's the next guy on the board for me.
All right, I am going Mark Williams with my final pick in the redraft. Mark Williams was someone that I was high on draft night. Earlier this week it was announced that Mitch Kupchak was stepping down or transitioning to an advisory role for Charlotte, and Mitch Kupchak has caught some slack over the years for some of his decision making. And I tweeted that I think we at least need to recognize that he got the Brandon Miller decision right in the 2023 draft, because there was a lot of sentiment that Scoot should be the pick. I think he got 2022 right too, because he got Mark Williams with the 15th overall pick. And when you look at the guys who went behind him, this looks like a somewhat of a no-brainer in retrospect. But Mark Williams, I think, has a chance to be their center of the future. He's essentially averaging a double-double now. He's been out since December with a back contusion, but he's at 12.7 points, 9.7 rebounds. He's a rim protecting presence in the middle, not quite as much as you would like. I think there's still potential for him to grow in that area. But this guy's their starting center for the next decade, and they got him with the 15th overall pick. So I think that was really good value for Charlotte in this draft. All right, that is the re-ranking of the top 10. But before we sign off, Ebas, anybody else that was on your board that you want a quick shout out here?
Yeah, I actually had Williams at 10, just like you. The three other guys that kind of stood out to me and going back and doing this would be Jeremy Sohan. I think has proven, I don't know if I would have taken him quite as high as his first took him. I think they took him at number 9, but definitely I think he's proving that he should have been in the lottery territory. Mm-hmm. Walker Kessler, I think, has been a very nice surprise after getting traded to the Jazz. And for a guy that went a little bit further down in the draft is doing some things, showing to be a shot blocker, nearly 3 a game, I think, and very efficient around the rim, not anything crazy. And then the last guy who stood out to me was just Tari Eason, who I think is just a really nice piece in Houston as they're rebuilding things, and certainly a guy that I think they got pretty good value out of at number 17.
Couple trends for this draft in retrospect that I want to acknowledge is I think the bigs were undervalued. There's a lot of talk on draft night about how, you don't take bigs high anymore, and that's the old NBA. But I think you can make the argument that Jalen Duren, Mark Williams, and Walker Kessler all should have gone higher. In this exercise, this redraft exercise, I think they all would have gone higher. And then I also want to give credit in terms of finding value late in the first round. How about the work that Denver did there? Christian Braun at 21. I mean, if we went to, 15 in this redraft, I certainly would have taken him. I think, his ability to step in, play minutes for those guys has been impressive and just NBA ready. Credit to him and to Bill Self. And then getting Peyton Watson at 30 when he didn't play. We just talked about this a couple shows ago at UCLA. Finding that potential on the margin and getting 2 players that ended up being rotation players a year after the draft in Brown and Watson, and then locked in on those rookie scale contracts, which helped for the salary cap, I think was huge for Denver. And then the last player I want to shout out on the margins, Andrew Nembhard's been really good, continues to be good. But the Trailblazers got Jabari Walker at 57. And he's been very solid for them. Looks like a longtime NBA pro. 8.4 points, 47% from the floor. About 6.5 rebounds per game. So he's and a stock a game if you're into the steals plus blocks category. So really good value late in the second round for the Blazers as well. Ebas, you and I enjoy watching the NBA. We enjoy talking the NBA. So I have a lot of fun with these episodes, and I appreciate you doing it with me again.
Yeah, thanks for having on. Looking forward to the next one.
All right, check it out, 247sports.com, 247 Sports channel. Everything you could ever want to know about recruiting, college basketball, transfer portal, NBA draft, and much more. You know where to find us, 247sports.com and the 24/7 Sports channel.